Politics alert. I like that a lot. Hello and welcome. First of all, my name's Taylor, and if you didn't know already, I am an independent data analyst, and I understand that my hat says "fuck Trump" and not you, but I want you to think about that for a second. And I do confidently wear this hat around in public, and of course I do get different looks. But I want to talk to you about something that's somewhat complex, but it's pretty easy to understand. And wait a second. Politics alert. I just do that because a lot of people think talking about something like voter fraud or, say, voter suppression would be politics. And I understand why you would think that. But politics is what parties do. And I'm not in a party. Civics is what citizens do. And I do believe that this is just what you would call civic engagement. With that said, where am I going with this? So, fuck Trump, not you. And when I say not you, I'm talking to you who voted for Trump. Okay? Wow. Okay? When you think of the idea of the United States, there's one thing that we all generally don't like the concept of, and that's the Electoral College. Right? I think most people can agree that we don't like it. Now, in theory, it's kind of like the idea of the United States being a republic in a form, okay? And then of course, each state does a popular vote challenge for those electoral votes. So that would be more of the democratic concept, right? So we have two different competing theories in America about how we should be governed. Are we a democracy or a republic? You see where this kind of goes goes here, right? So run with me here. So the electoral college would be more like the republic, okay? And the popular vote is more like democracy. Following along? So you have to win, like I said, your popular vote of the state, and then you win the electoral college of that state, right? We all know that, common knowledge, okay? So when my neighbor votes for Trump, right? And think about my entire state, that one person didn't cause the entire state to go for Trump. Following along, right? So don't hate your neighbors, okay? Now, in this theory or in this process of thinking, I want you to think about my perspective of being in the state of Arizona. In the 2024 election, as we were figuring out and learning who won, Donald Trump won the Electoral College, and Arizona had yet to call who won its popular vote. So in theory, the entire state of Arizona didn't matter. Right? Think about that for a second, right? He still won Arizona, Trump did, but it had yet to be called for Trump. And he had already won the Electoral College. So there's a term, I'm going to throw a fancy word out there, but it's called immaterial, starting with IMM, immaterial. Okay? What that means is that there's not like my one vote or your one vote or your neighbor's one vote didn't cause Trump to win. Okay? It's a legal term. So when you think about voter fraud, it does happen. And voter fraud is very different than voter suppression. Okay? You following along? So voter fraud is more along the lines of someone pretending to be somebody that they're not, right? Okay? And what stops that from happening? Having an ID when you go vote. Okay? Like your driver's license, right? Something that an ID most people can get. Okay? Not an extra ID, which is what a lot of people are arguing for. And I don't care what political side you're on, both sides are for voter ID. And voter ID is a form of voter suppression. It's important that you understand that. And we're going to talk about how voting is your constitutional right, and it's not a privilege. A lot of people are comparing voting to privileges. You got to have an ID to drive a car. You got to have an ID to go buy alcohol. Yeah, those are privileges, right? Those are not your constitutional rights. There's a big difference. Huge difference. So the next time you see one of those memes comparing voting ID and having an ID to buying alcohol, remember that. You have a right to vote in the Constitution, right? The 15th, the 19th, the 24th, and the 26th Amendments specifically speak to voting. It's not as popular as the gun, right? As far as firearms, the Second Amendment, because the Second Amendment's very simple language, very specific to one thing. Where voting, people had to earn their rights through the years, so it's in amendments. Okay? And there's two more to speak to. The 14th and the 17th are very important as well. The 17th Amendment gave citizens like you and I the ability to vote for senators. And that's a democratic move, if you think about it, right? Republics, only a few people get to vote. So when I see conservatives try to tell you that we're a republic and not a democracy, what I see is brainwashing. Brainwashing. Hear me out. And the reason why it's brainwashing is because in a republic, only a few people get to vote, right? Not everybody. And if you're really afraid of people taking over your country through voting, the more people who vote, the less likely that's going to happen. So stop restricting the votes. Okay? You're following along, right? So again, it's your constitutional right. It's not a privilege. Understand that. So, the rule of law is important because I posted it in a few videos on my shorts, my YouTube shorts. Sorry, let me be more specific there. And I want you to think about it. If there was no law that said you cannot murder people, there would be more murder. Right? It doesn't stop it completely, but there would be more. That's the important thing. I'm trying to make sure people understand that concept. So that concept applies in a lot of areas. So when you apply it to voting, right? Why does someone want to come to America as an immigrant? There's a lot of reasons, I would imagine. And one of them might be the idea that we vote in our representation, right? Right? Yeah. So what happens if you are not legally eligible to vote and then you vote? Voter fraud, right? Voter fraud. You lose your right to vote in a lot of places indefinitely. So it kind of defeats the logic of immigrants coming to vote in America when you break it down like that. It's important. You don't really hear many people breaking this stuff down, and it's important to me that you understand this. It's important to me that a lot of people understand this, so I encourage you to share this with others. I understand maybe I'm not the best person to deliver this stuff, but maybe you are for your family. Okay? Okay, back to the rule of law. So the idea that there's the laws and the it's a deterrent, right? So laws deter people from committing those crimes. So if you believe that there's a mass amount of people who are illegally voting from other countries, I want you to think of it like this. First of all, there'd be a record. Okay? There'd be a paper trail of it because they'd be filling out paperwork and sending it in. Right? Let's think, America. And if you get caught, again, you lose your right to vote in a lot of places indefinitely. Okay? So if you have the rule of law applied there, and then you think about participation rates, okay, really low, just a hair over half of America, like 60, 68%, somewhere in there. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but ballpark right in there is the number of people in America who vote. And you and I are being told by Donald Trump that there's millions of illegal immigrants voting, and they haven't yet to show you a shred of proof. Think about that. It's just, the proof's coming. The proof's coming, Taylor. You wait. We've been waiting, and they've proven that Trump is wrong. Anybody that says there's widespread voter fraud is wrong. I'm not saying there's widespread voter suppression, because that's different. That's different. We're talking about the fraud. Okay? So, voter ID, where am I going with that? If you tell people they have to have an extra ID to go vote, and you have low participation rates, what's going to happen is you're going to have even less people voting, and you're only going to get the people that are dedicated to following politics who end up voting. How many people do you know follow politics regularly? Very minimal, right? Following politics is actually not a very lucrative business unless you are like hardcore into Trump and then you're really good at it. In my opinion. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but that's generally what we're looking at here. So, voter ID being voter suppression. I want you to think about it like this. When you buy an airline ticket, right? You have your driver's license, you buy your ticket, you get to the airport. Okay, you're going through a TSA check line, and you're validating that you're eligible to vote, right? You're showing your ID, and then you get through, you're past TSA. Okay, you have two things to show. You've already validated that you're legal and that you can fly on an airline, right? So that's the same concept of having a driver's license to prove who you are and a voter ID indicating that you've registered to vote. And that's how it is in Arizona. Okay? So you get to the gate. Now just imagine, right? You're in a secure area. There's no more people coming in after the TSA, right? Other than people that work in there, but they're not getting on the plane with you and trying to validate with a pass, right? You get to the gate and they're like, sorry, we're going to need to validate your ID and an additional ID to make sure that you are qualified. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Okay? So I'm all for laws, right? I'm all for law and order. Okay? But if you're going to restrict my rights, you better have some damn fucking good reason to do so. Sorry for my language. Not sorry for my language, but you get my point. You better have a damn good reason to be taking away my rights. Where am I going with this? Where am I going with this? Guns.
Taylor, you gotta have ID to go buy a gun.
Okay, let me ask you this. When you go cast a vote on a ballot, is that piece of paper going to directly kill somebody? No. I'll answer that question for you. Now, when you go buy a gun, do you want anybody to go buy a gun? No. What's one way to validate someone's, number one, has the right to buy a gun, right? An ID. Now, keep in mind, there's two IDs to go vote, and there's only one ID to prove who you are to go buy a gun. Think about that for a second. Now, can a gun with a bullet and a human pulling the trigger on purpose or accidental, a lot of people don't speak to this, but there's a lot of accidental gun deaths because people don't actually learn about the actual hardware and how it works and the safety precautions that come with it. You can always tell when someone are handling a gun, they don't know what the fuck they're doing with it. They're just doing it for show. But a gun with a bullet, with a human, can directly kill somebody and take away someone's life. Okay? So there's a huge difference. So yeah, I'm okay with having to prove who I am to go buy a fucking firearm. And I'm not okay with having to prove who I am because I've already done it to go vote. But Taylor, what if someone votes on my behalf? Let's talk about that. So, 2 weeks, right? 3 weeks. Early voting. Do that. Right? What happens if it's all one day condensed? What happens? What happens if someone votes on your behalf? You're going to get there and you're going to be like, sorry, you've already voted. You don't have any time to prove them wrong, right? Early voting, you can prove them wrong. But now, you're more likely to get struck by lightning than someone to vote on your behalf. Just keep that in mind. Just keep that in mind. Right? Voter fraud happens, but it's immaterial. Right? Back to the hat. Right? Your neighbor, your family members who voted for Trump, you who voted for Trump, you individually did not put him into office. There was a lot of things that had to happen. A lot of brainwashing had to happen to get people to vote for Trump. Number one, get people to ignore his constitutional acts as far as trying to overturn a free and fair election. Okay? Think about that for a second. Half, if not more than half of the country thinks there was some sort of Fedsurrection I'm not fucking kidding here. All right? Most people didn't pay attention to the January 6th hearings because we as a society collectively have become so demoralized that we don't trust our media, we don't trust our government. And this, I'm talking about 4 years ago, folks. So no one paid attention to that shit. And then you have a bunch of people in 2022 running on the idea of elections being stolen. Right? Thankfully, some people were informed enough, but a lot of people got into positions of power in 2022 and then again in 2024. So we got a real uphill battle here. This is one reason why I'm speaking to this very complex situation that we have in America as far as voting fraud and voting suppression. So Donald Trump, the MAGA movement, even people on the left are trying to convince you that there's so much voter fraud that we have to restrict it. Okay? Voting machines, a little bit different subject. Okay? But keep in mind, Fox News had to settle, didn't have to, but they settled with Dominion Voting for $787 million for defrauding them and defaming them, essentially. And they settled. Okay? $787 million. That's a big chunk of fucking money. Okay? To shut up. But what it is that Fox News was lying about voting machines. So if you really think that there's a whole ton of fraud in voting machines, you would see lawsuits. And we're not seeing that. Okay? So what we have to do is focus on registering to vote. Donald Trump, I don't know if he can stop the votes or not. I don't know if he can stop elections because our states run their elections. It's important. So just register to vote. Go cast your votes on paper. It'll be my suggestion. And just don't do it by mail because I'm sure that Donald Trump's going to take something to the Supreme Court telling the Supreme Court that because of this executive order, only these votes count. And it's going to be votes on, he's going to probably try to push election day on paper. So worst case scenario, that's what we do. But more importantly, we have to vote. We have to talk to each other. We have to. We have to. We cannot let apathy win. We cannot let apathy defeat our morale. We can't. We have to talk to each other. We have to be patient. When someone calls you a name, just deflect. Like, don't worry about it. Shield it away. I call it out. Hey, that's division. Like, I don't know why you're making this personal. This really has nothing to do with us. Right? If anything, if they have a if you're dealing with a narcissist, just be like, hey, why are you talking to me like that? Like, seriously, what's going on? And then they'll respond in a way that a narcissist would, right? You just got to talk to them differently. Know your audience, if you know what I'm saying. Okay? So we have to talk to each other. We have to communicate. We have to listen. Listen to each other. Trump supporters, when we say that Trump's like Hitler, we're not saying Trump's gassing millions of people. Stop your fucking rhetoric and listen. All right? Listen. Left, those on the left, I know it's difficult, but try. Try. If you can't get through, just don't worry about them. Talk to people that are not so politically engaged. Keep grounded reality, be normal. Just laugh it off. Like, you want to vote for Trump? That means you're voting for kids who can't play sports with each other. It's funny, but it's true, right? Think about the executive order where transgenders can't play sports with kids. It's fucking nonsense. It's nonsense. Just laugh at it. Point it out, right? Call out the deflections. Last thing I'll leave you with this before I practice my shitty ass guitar here. No, not this, my actual playing. Visit my website, thestrategicowl.com. If you scan this URL over here, it'll get you right to it. I have an app I've coded. On both platforms, you have access to the Constitution and what I've built called a voter dashboard. And on the voter dashboard, choose your state, and you have a quick little link to go register to vote. And then below that is a Trump check. Type in your zip code, hit Trump check. I know it seems like a biased position, but you either support Trump or you don't, okay? And people who want to vote for Trump aren't going to vote for anybody who's a Trump supporter, so it's pretty much non-biased, right? Just hit Trump check. And what it's doing is it's taking your zip code and it's figuring out what district you're in. Now, this is links to my database, that I've created, and it'll tell you here's your candidates with links to their websites and little banners, Trump or impeach. And let's get more people that want to impeach him in the primaries, right? If you really care about your voice, vote in your primary and then vote in the midterms, and just keep that a regular way of being. Just do that regularly, right? Just pay attention. 15 minutes a day, maybe. You don't have to spend a lot of time. You don't have to go crazy with it. Control your emotions, right? Figure out an outlet for your anger. Writing, drawing, guitar. For me, it's those things I just listed. So projection, sorry. Either way, America, I love you. Let's de-Trumpify together. I'm going to play you some stuff I've been working on. This is a tune down in drop D, key A, and you might hear a little bit of mixing of some other things, but I hope you enjoy this. If not, just tune out. I love you. Peace out. Or if you're just tuning in, here's the guitar section. Say it with me. 3, 2, 1. Freedom of speech. It's important to me. America, I love you. Thanks for listening if you made it this far. I hope you appreciated some new perspective in life. Thanks for being here. Love you. Peace out.
Politics alert.